Starting the process to buying your first home can seem like an impossible task. Where do you start and how do you plan to make the biggest decision in your entire life? Well, stick around because today I'm gonna walk you through how to plan for buying your very first house. Let's talk. In today's world, it can seem like it's an impossible task to afford that first house. But if you have the right tools and you have the right plan and strategy, you can easily get your first house. Taking a step back, I can remember when me and my wife first got married and we couldn't jump right into our very first house. We didn't have the income to support the monthly mortgage payments. We didn't have good job history either, both of which are extremely important when you're trying to buy a first house. But thankfully, I did have parents who taught me one important thing, and that's to have a good credit score. But before we get into this exact process, there are some questions that are hugely important that you need to get answered before I give you this roadmap. Why should I buy a house? What credit score do I need to shoot for? How much money do I need to try and save up? And do I need a certain job history? Let's start with that very first question of why you should even think about buying a house. I mean, doesn't paying rent just do the same thing? While yes, rent is gonna get you that home, you're gonna have a roof over your head, there's one thing that you're not getting. It's equity and also some tax benefits too. But over time, history has shown that the value of houses is just gonna go up. So you're gonna appreciate in value. At the same time, you're gonna pay down your mortgage every single month. So you're gonna gain more and more equity every year. Now, the second question of what credit score are you gonna shoot for is interesting because there is a minimum requirement to get into a loan. But that's not what you're shooting for because a low minimum credit score means you're gonna pay a really high interest rate. So while on some loans like FHA, the minimum is gonna be a 580 and conventional is like a 620. If you can get anywhere from 680 up to 720, your interest rate is gonna be so much better than if you were at the bottom at 580. Third question, it's a little tricky, but I'm gonna help you out. How much money do you need to try to save up? Now, this can definitely vary depending on the type of loan that you're gonna get, the state that you live in. All of these things definitely matter, but as a general rule of thumb, if you can start to save anywhere from 5 to 10% of your monthly income that you bring home and set that aside for yourself to buy a house, that is a great place to start. And the final question is, do I need a certain job history? Answer to that question simply is yes. Most lenders are gonna require that you need at least 2 years of job history before you can apply for a loan. And if you're an entrepreneur or you work for yourself, that definitely is going to be a totally different requirement. So work with a lender to figure out what you need. With these important questions out of the way, let's take a look at a roadmap and see exactly what steps you're going to follow to buy your first house. So starting off with number 1, you have to start by working with a lender. After you do that, you can move on to step 2, which is to work on your credit. Number 3, going on to how much house can you afford. Moving on to number 4, you're going to go ahead and get that pre-approval. And then finally, number 5, you're going to work with an agent to find your very first house. So let's go through each step in detail so you know exactly what it looks like. So the first step is starting to work with that lender. This is a very crucial step because a lot of times, most people, they don't even know where they currently are in a lender's eyes. I've talked to so many people and so many of my clients and they've said, I just don't know where I'm at. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with not knowing. So this is the step where you're gonna just simply submit information to the lender and they're gonna be able to tell you, okay, based on your income, your job history, your credit, all these things, this is the type of loan and this is how much of a loan you can get. And sometimes you might be surprised. You might already qualify for something that you had no idea you could get. So when working with a lender, it's important to know a few things. First of all, you want to know the type of loans that you could potentially get. So there's FHA, there's conventional, there's a rural development. If you're a veteran, there's a veteran's loan. There's all these different types of loans out there and they all have different terms, rules, regulations. So working with that lender is going to be so key to help you figure out which one is best for you. Another important thing is to not get stuck with one lender. All lenders are going to be relatively competitive. Their pricings are going to be good. Don't let one lender tell you that they can do something that another lender can't. Shop around with different banks. If you have a credit union, check with them. But let's just assume that you don't have the right type of credit. Maybe you don't have quite enough income yet. So let's talk about how we can improve that. So in this second step, this is where you're going to start to work on your credit. There's a saying that I have that says cash is king, but credit is queen. If you play chess, you know what I mean. With credit, there's 3 types of credit that you need to know. There's revolving credit, which is going to be things like your credit cards or HELOCs, things like that. You're going to have installment credit, which is going to be like your auto loans and student loans, also your mortgages. And then you have other things like open credit, which is like utility bills, all of which play a critical role in getting good credit. But if there's one thing that I can say, and I'm sure every other real estate professional is going to say the same thing: pay your bills on time. Okay, so moving into the third step is going to be, how much house are you going to actually be able to afford? Is there some sort of secret formula that you need to know? Well, kind of, yes. So first thing you need to do is you need to know how much gross income you bring in every single month. Let's just say that's about $4,000. A good rule of thumb that most lenders are going to say is that you need about 2 times your debt to be able to afford that home. So if you have $4,000 a month in gross income and you have $2,000 of debt, then you have $2,000 of gross income to be able to afford to buy a house. And now that you're armed with that number, you can go to a lender, they'll analyze it and they'll say, okay, based on that, this is how much house you're going to be able to afford. Now that you've gotten through the first 3 steps, you're ready to get one of the most important pieces of paperwork you're going to get in this whole process. It's going to be your pre-approval letter to start searching for your first house. Once you've worked on your credit, you have a stable job, and you've been saving up your money, you go back to that lender and say, hey, I've done everything that I need to do. Let me get that pre-approval letter so I can start looking for my house. And it's at this point that sometimes people get kind of scared and they get concerned about interest rates. They always say, I don't know, is the interest rates too high? I'm scared that if I don't wait that, interest rates could drop, and that would be good thinking. However, when interest rates drop, what goes up is the home prices. So while you think by waiting, you could potentially save, $200, $300, $400 down the road by waiting for that interest rate, that same house could be $10,000, $30,000, $50,000 more expensive, and you really didn't save any money. There's a saying out there that says you marry the house and you date the rate, but I completely disagree with that. So what's going to happen is most lenders are going to say, well, if you buy it now, you could just refinance it in 5, 6, 7 years down the road when the rates drop. You'll be saving hundreds of dollars and you'll get the house now at a good price. But a word of caution, that is the worst advice someone could give you. You see, what banks don't tell you and what lenders and most lenders don't actually know is when you refinance the house, you're actually now paying way more interest to the bank. And so what might look like you're saving a couple of $100s every month, if you were to add it up, you would actually be losing tens of thousands of dollars at the end of that loan. So don't let a bank fool you in refinancing. Do the math first. Now we've arrived to the best part of all of this. This is where you're going to work with your local agents to find your house. This is where finding a good real estate agent is so key. You can use different resources like Zillow, or you could even use your own lender that you've been talking to. I'm sure that they have great connections with good realtors. You want to make sure that you find someone that's trustworthy, that knows what they're talking about, that isn't afraid to do the dirty work for you. Now that you're armed with this entire roadmap, there's a few other tips that you need to make this whole process even better. Go ahead and click on this video right here to get the 7 best tips for buying your first house.